Hello, just wanted to do a face reveal again for the start of season 1. So, here we go.
At the film's ending, Cobb stops looking at the top completely. It is showcasing that he has moved on from his grief, so that is part of the answer to Inception's ending. The top is ambiguous as to whether the end is a dream or a reality. But the point that the ending is answering is, like I said, that Cobb accepted what has happened and moved on. Later on, I will explain what other factors go into this, as well as what I believe makes all the evidence point to the answer, which is hidden in front of us, but we have to show our work to get there. Now, throughout the film, Cobb himself is seen spinning the top only after he wakes up from a dream sequence. This is his reality check. It's muscle memory to not end up like his dead wife Mal, and that is due to Mal killing herself by accident, believing that her reality was all a dream. Now, the way that we know that her death was real is because of the top, because it's only ever seen in reality. We see the top next to the broken glass right before her death when Cobb steps on it near the glass. Very important and very tricky information here. Ariadne is shown Cobb's totem, the top, because she is the audience surrogate character, if that makes sense. We already saw it prior to her entrance in the film, but her character signals our surrogate next to Cobb. Cobb also explains the top itself is a totem, and everybody on his team is told to have a totem to anchor them in the real world. It acts as a way to condition the audience to think, well, because it is confirmed that when the top falls down, it is reality, then when the top spins endlessly, it means it is a dream. But we do not see it in a dream sequence. The reason is because it's like negative positive magnets. The explanation for this also helps to debunk the wedding ring theory. Essentially, we see the wedding ring in dreams where Mal is, and a totem is supposed to not be seen or touched by anybody in the dreams because Cobb claims that will cause it to lose its weight. Him wearing the wedding ring signals that it's not his totem or that it is a sign of hypocrisy. So instead, it's showing the universal rule that we only sometimes notice wedding rings on people, but then our brain ignores it like our nose. So essentially, what I am saying is that the wedding ring isn't the totem that Cobb uses because everybody in the dreams can see it. But they don't feel it because why would you touch someone else's wedding ring? That would be bizarre. It acts like the positive and the negative of a magnet between the top and the wedding ring. The wedding ring is visible in the dreams in limbo because it is the tether that's keeping Mal alive and real in the dream since she is dead in reality. So, with that being said, in the dreams, Mal and the wedding ring are there because in that space, the bond is still real and alive. The top is what got Mal killed in the first place, not because she kept spinning it in dreams or limbo, which is what she did do, but because Cobb put it in her limbo safe and then accidentally planted the idea without realizing what would happen, which is him accidentally committing inception on her. So it is deeply ambiguous whether Cobb doesn't spin or look at the top in dreams because either he is terrified of it falling over and not knowing what is real anymore, or if he deliberately leaves it out of his possession from the dreams due to his trauma of Mal's suicide. Either way, the ambiguity pushes the point that Cobb never uses the top in dreams and it's only used in reality. The top is seen and spun in reality after Cobb wakes up, and the wedding ring isn't visible because in reality, Mal is dead. She isn't there or real anymore. So the top being her totem, he spent it to make sure he is in reality and to keep the bond alive since the ring is evidently absent in reality but still there in dreams. So, just to clarify, in dreams, the ring and Mal are both there because that is where the marriage is still real. In reality, the top is there with no wedding ring because the top is what's left of Mal to Cobb, and so therefore the ring isn't real.
It's just a
There are two pieces of continuity evidence that help prove the answer that the ending is reality. The first being Cobb spinning the top 3 times throughout the film.
No, it needs to be more unique than that. Like, this is it.
And Cobb seeing his kids' heads and hearing their voices, but never seeing their faces.
James, Philippa.
When Cobb spins the top one last time, he is doing it in the exact spot in his home where he was in a dream with Ariadne and Maul, and it acts as deja vu because he explains in the dream that he knew Inception could be done because he did it first to Maul. It was his last reality check because it was almost too good to be true for him. Throughout the film, Cobb refuses to see his kids' faces. This is because he does not want their faces to become part of his dreams and therefore not be recognizable in real life. This is what he refers to as contamination of reality into dreams. So when Cobb spins the top for one last reality check, he then sees his kids' faces and realizes it is reality because he acted on muscle memory and can now see their faces without trying to mentally fabricate them or worry about contamination. And someone else called out to them first, which was Miles. He is basically forgetting that he literally spun the top, but then he realizes since he can see his kids' faces and spun the top, that it is all real. It's like he pulled Inception on himself in reverse so deeply that he forgot about the top and his grief over Maul. The film acts with dream layers, specifically 3 of them. Each layer has no real term for it besides just numbers like 1, 2, and 3. So it's all about the architecture of the dream. And technically speaking, limbo is not a layer, it's infinite subconscious. But for the sake of right now, let's discuss a deeper meaning of all this. The first layer is seeing the ending of Inception and debating whether it is reality or a dream. The second layer is understanding that while the evidence of the answer is scattered throughout the film and put in front of our faces at the finale, the purpose of the finale is that Cobb moved on from his grief over Maul. The third and final layer is realizing that because Cobb commits to his muscle memory one last time and spins the top in that deja vu spot, and then sees his kids' faces, it means that it is reality because he spun the top after waking up. It's tricky though, because you'd ask why he didn't spin it on the plane after waking up. It's because he was watching Sato make the phone call, and everybody would have seen the top. And the plane's gravity would obviously screw up the topple at the top. And remember, each time he spins it, he does it when nobody is watching. But because the whole idea of the film is the top spinning, we assume that if it keeps spinning, it is a dream. But Cobb never so much as takes it out in the dreams. The beginning scene on the beach. That is limbo. Hold on to this for a while. And we know that Ariadne goes with Cobb to get Fisher out of limbo, and then they know Sato went into limbo soon after due to his prior injuries. But here is something to think about. Cobb knew exactly how much time Sato had before he went into limbo. So let's explain this with NLPR clarity. This is going to be a lot, so bear with me. So first off, Sato is shot and injured in the first layer of the Inception, the Rainy City. As he is slowly bleeding out, each layer as the heist continues puts him at risk of going deeper into limbo, technically speaking. At least in terms of the film's mechanisms of how it works. So either way, he was going to end up in limbo regardless. And 2, Fisher meets the same type of fate as Sato, just differently. Maul shoots him and he is instantly dead or in limbo, and Sato is slower into limbo, so Fisher is more like an instant kill later in the heist. It's like a narrative parallel, if you will. And then with the third step, when Cobb goes down into limbo, he is looking to save Fisher primarily. Sato does not go there just yet. So when he is looking for Robert, of course Maul is waiting for him and says they can both be down there together forever, just as they both wanted. We know this is not true. We are led to believe Maul is saying it out of her own agency. But she is a projection of Cobb's subconscious, so it's him saying this to himself because of his guilt and trauma. It's like Cobb is edging himself with his own guilt before letting go. He feels and believes performing Inception on Maul was his mistake, which it is, but it was not what killed her. Maul committed suicide. Technically, she made that choice, but in all fairness, it is because she forgot what was real and not real.
This is my dream. Why can't I control this?
Because you don't know you're dreaming!
She just wanted the weight to fall on Cobb while she was a projection. He made a mistake, and so now his trauma makes him decide not to do Inception ever again. Until, that is, when Sato offers him a ticket home in exchange for the heist. So here's where it's very tricky, but explainable. When Cobb finds Sato in limbo, the dialogue is very precise yet hard to follow, so I will lead us through this maze. It is explained that limbo is a dream world, where the unconstructed dream space that exists at the deepest level of the subconscious, a shared infinite realm where time moves extremely slowly and one can easily become trapped. This is why Sato, while there, tells Cobb that he knew about the top from many years ago, because he feels he has been there for lots of time. And then Sato references the half dream he had of Cobb in the exact same place prior to the first heist.
To kill me. It belonged to a man I met in a half-remembered dream. Have you come to kill me? God. Impossible.
Sato claims this is impossible because he is in awe of how well versed Cobb is with Inception and dream thieving, and because to him it feels like he would have never been rescued. Many years ago, that dialogue, it's because when you're deep in the layers of dreams and especially limbo, time moves very slowly. It feels like all that time when in reality it's only been minutes to hours. Here's the genius hidden catch right in front of us. While the top is never shown in the dream sequences, we do see it in the limbo sequence when Sato and Cobb are together. Sato does not know about the top, or that is what we are supposed to think. He actually does see it, but it's a very brief blink and you'll miss it detail. So as Sato grabs and spins the top, the reason this gesture is brilliant is because Cobb never takes out the top in dreams. As mentioned earlier, he is terrified of it falling over and thinking he is in reality. But when Sato pulls it out, it is not that Cobb thinks or feels that it is reality. He realizes that his projections have healed and that someone else pulled out the one thing that reminds Cobb what is real. That's how Cobb knows that the job is complete. He witnesses his own projection, giving Sato the top and gun down in the limbo layer so that Sato can use the top as a reality check one last time for both Sato and Cobb. Now here's where it gets really tricky but is explainable. Cobb never touches the top while in limbo or gives it to Sato. The soldier does. The soldier is actually Cobb's projection, giving it to the person who he is saving. It was the only way to show Sato what is real and what isn't real without breaking his core rule. Alright, now we exit the NLPR and we're back into this yet again. So now, how does Fisher get out of limbo? When Cobb and Ariadne go down there, Maul reveals she was holding Fisher hostage on the front porch. It's simple as that. Eanes revives him, the kick is administered, and he is risen. Right here is possibly the most important dialogue of the entire film because it connects the intro to Limbo and then Limbo to the Japanese castle in the beginning, and then how it all connects into the audition heist at the very beginning of the film. So it's where Cobb explains the dream sequence logic to Ariadne. It's also part of real neuroscience too.
Genuine inspiration, right? Now, in a dream, our mind continuously does this. We create and perceive our world simultaneously, and our mind does this so well that we don't even know what's happening. That allows us to get right in the middle of that process.
How?
By taking over the creating part.
This
Now,
dialogue
is where I
proves that the introduction on the beach is Limbo and the audition heist happened prior because the half dream logic and Limbo time dilation logic. It's just that Nolan pulled a sophisticated trick right in front of us. Sato thinks he has been in Limbo for decades, and so because the intro is him in Limbo and the dialogue calls a neuroscience logic of half-remembered dreams, that is why it cuts to the audition heist, because it is in the midst of that dream. And the reason why Cobb is eating in Limbo is because Sato was eating in front of him during the audition heist. And the Japanese castle is there because there was a place that Sato would have known about, which the original architect, Nash, constructed, but it fooled Sato because he didn't realize it was a dream. Miles gives in and introduces Ariadne to Cobb. She is the audience surrogate character. Yusuf explains that for 3 dream layers, they will need to combine with an extremely powerful sedative, which requires a big kick because everything else won't wake them up. Yusuf explains that the compound they'll be using creates a clear connection between the dreamers while accelerating brain function, and this explains why they use the passive device all throughout the movie because that's how they do the dream sharing. So all this results in more time on each level, and the brain function in the dream will be about 20 times more than normal. So when you step into a dream within that dream, the effect is compounded. It's 3 dreams, which is 10 hours times 20, so 200 hours, or roughly 8.3 to 8.5 days. The first level down is a week. 10 times 20 equals 200 hours. 6 months, the second level down, is 200 times 20, which is 4,000 hours. And then the third level is 10 years, but it is really closer to 9 when you do the proper math. So it's 4,000 times 20 equals 80,000 hours, give or take. So let's go back on this a little bit. Yusuf explains the kick is how the team gets woken up. Arthur's like, well, how are we going to wake up if the sedation is this strong? Yusuf then says, well, I customized the sedative to leave inner ear function unimpaired. That way, however deep the sleeper will still feel the falling or the tipping. Then Cobb's like, well, the trick is to synchronize the kick so it can penetrate all 3 levels. Then Arthur finally comes back in with, oh, so we can use the musical countdown to synchronize the different kicks. This is why different classical music is used in the distinct levels that we see.
Why is it so important to dream?
Notice
My
how
dreams are
Cobb
still
never
good.
answered the question that Ariadne asked him because most likely there is no answer as to why it is so important to dream scientifically. Cobb and Arthur then say they need something that will keep them occupied in reality for up to 10 hours for the heist to work. So then Sato's like,
Sydney to Los Angeles. One of the longest flights in the world. He makes it every 2 weeks.
so Cobb knows that he can't just lock Maul in a prison of memories. But the point of him doing these things isn't to keep Maul locked up. It's more to help manifest her more so that he can control the trauma and grief to his advantage. Now, he won't tell Ariadne this because he is trying to pull out something that only he could do. He knows Ariadne would both understand and not understand, like a Schrodinger's paradox, if you will. Also, the name Maul kind of sounds like malicious intent in a way.
Nature of the dreamer. They attack like white blood
And that
cells
plays back
hiding in
into
the
saying how the most infectious thing is an idea, like he mentioned prior in the film.
What is the most resilient parasite? Bacteria? A
The way
virus?
Cobb looks at Sato briefly, and the camera is just barely more focused on Sato, is pointing towards something personal, yet it's blurred by the previous shot of both Arthur and Sato. And then between Cobb and Sato, the motivation for the job is repeated once more for the audience to understand and feel the weight of what is at stake going forward.
If I get on this plane and you don't honor our agreement, when we land, I go to jail for the rest of my life.
Complete the job en route. I make one phone call from the plane. You'll have no trouble getting through immigration.
Eames getting in Robert's way seems to be in character of the forgery that he is committing. Besides that, it just more or less says that his character is doing, one final real touch on Robert as like a one more for the road type of deal. And then we see that he grabbed Robert's passport and then gave it to Cobb, who then pretends like Robert dropped it. In a way, Robert and Cobb both share similar trauma. The big difference is that Robert legally lost his father to natural causes. Cobb lost his wife to accidental suicide. And the reason the agency where Eames is at does not tell Robert about Cobb is because they have no idea that Sato and Cobb are working together, let alone against Fisher. Plus, Fisher wouldn't even know about Cobb because Fisher is overseas and the incident with Maul happened in the States. Now, in this famous bridge scene, Cobb experiences a trigger of a memory with Maul because Ariadne used a place that both of them are familiar with, which results in contamination. Now, when Cobb realizes that it triggered Maul, he figured he needed to quietly conjure his own plan to bring Maul into the real heist at a critical moment, so he had a perfect alibi to get both Fisher and Sato out of Limbo to ensure that Sato couldn't not honor their arrangement in the end. Cobb tells Ariadne not to show him the dream layouts, but he is quite literally looking at all the blueprints around him as he says that. So he is committing hypocrisy because he is gearing up to pull off the unthinkable without anybody else knowing what he's doing.
Why can't you go home?
Because they think I killed her. Thank you.
For what?
for not
In a
asking
way,
whether I
this
did.
is brilliant writing because if Ariadne had asked, it plays into trauma logic where a victim only wants to talk about what happened and somebody who does not understand tries to hand over a solution. But in this case, he wants to legally protect himself at all costs because he believes deep down any and all words will be used against him. Here's where important things come into play and chaos heavily blurs it. So the train does come through violent and loudly. But this is not an accident. We know Ariadne saw the level of Cobb's subconscious in which a train went by. Again, the train is not random. It's because when Maul and Cobb have to commit suicide to escape Limbo, they use a train to do the job and wake up. So this train in the raiding city is evidence of Cobb using his own trauma to ambush the mission for his own secret gain.
It's more than that, so you might at least drop me at my stop. I'm afraid.
So as we can see, the projections with weapons come in and fire at the other car containing exclusively Eames, Arthur, Sato, and Fisher. So now we know that Sato was injured during the ambush because we see his wound. But here's what is crucially important. It is statistically impossible that all those bullets didn't hit anybody else in that car. But because it's a controlled dream layer, it's completely reasonable, or we're just led to believe that.
Right, so what happens when we die?
I drop into limbo.
Are you serious?
Limbo?
Unconstructed dream space.
Well, what the hell is down there?
Just raw, infinite subconscious. Nothing is down there. Except for whatever might have been left behind by anyone sharing the dream.
So the dialogue that Arthur explains here about Limbo makes the area where Sato is at in the beginning and the finale when he's, old and all, it makes it make so much more sense. Because if Limbo stretches time infinitely, he would have all the time he would need in his mind to build that Japanese castle by the ocean side. That's why the location is there, because as Cobb told Ariadne in her first lesson of dream sharing, the mind constantly creates that subspace for our brain to live in during the dream. So Sato had built it while he was down there, or he simply memorized it from the first audition heist, which was the half remembered dream that he mentioned. So either way, the answer as to why the building is what it is, it remains ambiguous.
When he wakes up, his mind is completely gone.
Cobb, I still honor the arrangement.
You're gonna become an old man,
Filled with regret.
waiting to die alone.
I'll come back. And we'll be young men together again.
This is just basically the planting of the emotional seed for the finale that makes Inception so famous.
Impossible. We were young men together. Filled with regret. Waiting to die alone. To convince me to honor our arrangement. So, do you want to take a leap of faith? To take a leap of faith, yes.
And then Peter tells Robert there was another alternate will that Robert didn't know his father had, produced. It's a lie to plant the starting idea in Fisher's mind that his dad didn't like him at all. But we have to remember, Peter isn't Peter in this sense. It's Eames projecting as Peter. Then Robert tells a story of what his father said on his deathbed earlier.
He called me to his deathbed, and I can only make out disappointed.
Peter, who is Eames, now has something to work off once they get to the finale to push Robert to, make Inception finally work. Ariadne says that she believes the train that came bursting through the raining city was Maul, or his subconscious to say the least. She is on the right path, but a little bit off. It wasn't subconscious or Maul for that matter. It was Cobb's choice to throw Rhythm off from the mission.
And the truth that as we go deeper into Fisher, we're also going deeper into you.
Now, Cobb knows this. It's just he has a schematic ready for it. So now we see the start of Maul and Cobb's limbo, which is on the beach. This is why the beach is also by Sato's castle in the area that we know about, because it's the dream space Cobb has constructed colliding with Sato's. Actually, no. The limbo beach was there the whole time, like Arthur said, because only Cobb had been down there. So Sato ended up in Cobb's limbo space and built his own castle down there, which is why it is there in that same, space. And then we see here that Mal puts the top in a safe in limbo, which is why safes are so central to the film's theme. The reason why we don't understand that Cobb performed Inception by accident on Maul first is because we are still under the impression it was someone else. And Maul was convinced the children were projections. All of this is because Maul looked at and touched the top in limbo and put it into a safe. And that started the idea that everything was still a dream that she couldn't escape. So it's a complex way of showing the metaphor that some people get hooked onto substances and can't see a way out other than, death. And they can't stop thinking about the drugs themselves. Meanwhile, Maul couldn't stop thinking about the idea of the top in the safe because she planted it there, and without realizing what she had done, led to her
Building a
suicide.
dream from your memory is the easiest way to lose your grasp on what's real and what is a dream.
Is that what happened to you?
Listen, this has nothing. Any features?
I don't think I should tell you. If Maul
We
finds
don't
out
have
that-
time for this. Did he add anything? Done it before.
Who'd you do it to?
But I'm actually.
Here, take a look. So you're learning.
Arthur told me she passed away.
How are the mazes coming along?
You've got to warn them if this is getting worse.
No one said it's getting worse.
Why can't you go home?
Because they think I killed her.
Now, a critical point to address is that every time someone asks Cobb why there was something that felt off, he deflects and focuses on something else. It points to how he knows what he's doing. And my theory is that Cobb put the projections there to only target Sato, because Cobb knows the exact time dilation it would take for Sato to go into limbo, and he didn't want Sato to come for the mission, but Sato said either he was coming or there'd be no deal. And if he could pull Sato out of limbo, it guarantees that Cobb goes home with no criminal record. So the alibi of Fisher having the security was perfect cover for Cobb's plan all along. And then we see right here, it's like, it says war between two Fishers. To me, this sounds like a real story or a book that Nolan added in as like a script Easter egg. And a very small detail, it says that the date is Sunday, August 19th, 2007. So this film takes place in the 2000s. So here is a micro detail that is very important, and it changes the integrity of Cobb altogether. All of them are in a city sharing a dream space to communicate the heist plans. Now, Cobb doesn't want to see the layout of the design of the layers because it means that if he sees it, his subconscious, Maul, will not know and interfere if he doesn't know, basically. But him being in this meeting shows that he is quietly breaking the rule, scanning the area. And I believe we're going to find out why he does this soon. Now, the dialogue here is crucial. Ariadne points out how Cobb instructed her to never use real memories for dreams. And Cobb says he knows that. I believe there's a few concrete reasons as to why he is doing this prior to the heist. For one, he is refreshing his memories of Maul so his projection of her and his other trauma keeps growing. And number two, he wants a clear grip on how to control his trauma and memories to his advantage during the initial heist. I also believe the reason his house is fully contaminated is because it was a mistake on his part from the beginning. Because in the finale, it ends in the same house and room. So even he is not sure if it's real or not. But because he spends the top when the top is only seen in reality, he forgets and then remembers it is real because his children are there in the end. When Cobb is catching the bullets after firing them, it's showing that Maul was his own trauma that he activated, but he couldn't balance the heist with the trauma. So it made him feel like it was a real heist and not a dream, so he's catching the evidence that he was there even though it's only a dream. It's a very sophisticated way of saying that the trauma kicked him just enough to where he really thought he had to be precise with his tracks, although Sato wasn't watching him and that it is all a dream layer. And then we see it's followed by Cobb being caught by Sato and Maul. So technically speaking, Cobb and Sato caught Cobb. So Sato claiming that the heist was an audition is a quiet way of saying that Inception performed by Cobb's team was a success, but only Cobb knew what he was doing. So it goes to show that Cobb wasn't necessarily trying to steal secrets. He wanted to prove to Sato beyond a reasonable doubt that he could pull off Inception to help Cobb get back to his children. The thing with all this that is super complex yet genius is that Sato says that Cobb failed the audition, but there was quiet, clear evidence that this was Cobb's plan the entire time. He wanted to plant the idea of performing Inception in Sato's mind so deeply that Sato thinks it is his own idea to hire Cobb to do it to someone else, who is Fisher, so that Sato can dominate world electricity. So Cobb performed an Inception 3 times in the film, the same as the 3 dream layers. So it's absolutely brilliant writing. I now realize the intro was only 2 dream layers. So Cobb performing Inception at layer 2 is our way of seeing that Cobb is so well versed in all this that he only needed those 2 layers in the end. And maybe later on we will find out why you actually need 3 layers and why we only see 2 in the beginning. Cobb throwing Sato to the carpet specifically was not an accident. He wanted Sato to know that it was a dream layer because he knew the inception he performed on Sato was successful in the end. We can now almost guarantee safely that Cobb recruited the first architect, who is Nash, because he wanted the carpet to become an error. He wanted Nash to sell them out because it would make the inception on Sato even more effective. So Sato would need Cobb to become more power dominant over Fisher, and Cobb needs Sato to make one phone call and erase their false criminal history. So it's a yin-yang relationship, if you will. Cobb is then saved by Sato, and he's like, this is my way of saving an investment. It's more like he sees Cobb as a moving investment and liability and risk all at once. The way they constantly workshop between reality and dream is pushing the point that we don't know what is real or a dream until it is undeniable, which is both what Cobb is and is not doing to everybody, including himself at all times. So we learned that the workshop place is actually what marks reality for now and most of the film, and then Arthur explains,
Dream sharing. It was a training program for soldiers to shoot and stab and strangle each other and then wake up.
Maul toys with Cobb, asking if she will survive if she jumps. It's a foreshadow reference of her accidental suicide later on. But we have to remember, this isn't Maul saying this. She is a projection from Cobb himself, so he's toying with himself in the end. And this all is actually part of actual trauma logic. This also goes to show that since Maul is Cobb's projection, it means he alerted Sato that they were actually asleep, which means Cobb was in control of that dream layer because he knew from the start that Sato was the only way back home to his kids. The overhead shot of the city that Cobb is running through visually mimics a maze, like a puzzle, which is a core part of like the posters and most of what Inception is. And here we see the second time that Cobb spins the top, which it signals that it is reality. And here with Eames, we learn something very important about Inception. It isn't about just the depth at which you plant the idea. It just has to be the simplest version and the most subtle. And then Sato insists that he will be joining the team because the only way he will know Cobb completed the job is if he is there. And then Yusuf shows Cobb what he uses the powerful sedative for. It's a whole room full of what we can call sleep addicts. It's also a brilliant metaphor for actual addiction logic and science. Because some people get so overwhelmed by the trauma and grief that they choose to drown in substances or literally sleep through it with supplements because the dreams they have become more pleasant than the reality that they have to face. And Yusuf happens to be the drug dealer.
If this is my dream, why can't I control this?
Because you don't know you're dreaming!
Technically, if it were a dream, Maul is correct. But because she is plagued by the idea of nothing being real anymore, she's convinced that it is all a dream. But Cobb knows that the top being there makes it reality. He never saw or touched the top in dreams or limbo until after she died. So because he sees it in reality now, he knows it is real. This is his current muscle/trauma reflex. Right here is very tricky, but also very important information. Ariadne has shown Cobb's totem, the top, and this is because she is the audience surrogate character. We already saw it prior to her entrance in the film. And then Cobb says,
"This one was hers. She'd spin it in the dream and would never topple. Just spin and spin."
This is incredibly important because it is already planting in the audience's mind the idea of the top being and the dreams and spinning forever. But we never see it in the dreams. It also shows the top spinning perfectly for just a moment. So it conditions us to believe Cobb, but what he is saying is a white lie. So like I said, it was never in the dreams. It was only in reality and limbo. We then see the reveal of Maul's suicide. And remember, the top is in the room, like I mentioned minutes prior to this. So it's signaling that it is reality. Now, the reason it is really only Maul and Cobb in the memory is because in trauma science, everything else becomes irrelevant. So it makes sure that the trauma is completely focused on. Now, the reason Maul filed charges against Cobb with an attorney is because she was so convinced she was in a chronic dream state and wanted to kill herself and wake up. And so she says that she believes if both she and Cobb kill themselves right then and there, the charges will be gone. And then Cobb tells Ariadne that Maul had herself declared sane by 3 different psychiatrists, so she had a bulletproof shield against Cobb. It's also saying that the 3 psychiatrists mirror the 3 dream levels needed for Inception, which means in the end that the idea of Cobb killing Maul is now an idea in the psychiatrists' minds. And just to point out, the woman who is calling the kids is the grandmother, which is explained earlier. Then the old man says, no, they come here to be woken up. In a way, this does make sense, because when you apply it to trauma logic, it's saying, again, that they'd rather be asleep in a world where they can't control anything than be in a world where things are still horrific for them and they can't control anything. We then see the first glimpse of the train tracks, but we don't register it yet because it hasn't been revealed what it means exactly. So right here we see that Cobb spins the top and it falls over. It signals that it's reality and not a dream. Now, the reason he only spins the top in reality and never a dream, it's explainable, and it's also complicated trauma logic. Basically, it's a muscle reflex. He does it only when he wakes up because he has conditioned himself to check reality, like when someone checks their front door 10 plus times just in case, you didn't lock it. So it's a trauma and a muscle reflex all at once because Maul accidentally killed herself due to not knowing what was real anymore. So him spinning the top, it signals that it is reality. But the part that seems like a loophole about it is the top itself. Basically, we are conditioned to believe that if it spins forever, then it is a dream. However, where it gets both airtight and smart is that we never see the top in any of the 3 dream layers. We only see it in reality and limbo because, in the film's logic, reality and limbo are technically speaking the opposites of a tight spectrum. The only difference is that in limbo, time does seemingly stretch forever. We don't actually see the top in dreams because Cobb does not want to risk seeing it fall over and not knowing what is real or not real anymore. And the top itself was actually the perfect item for this film because in real life, tops eventually fall over due to physics. It's just common sense. In a dream, sure, it can spin perfectly or forever, or whatever, but because the film is from Cobb's perspective, we have the inception of the top spinning perfectly in dreams. Then Cobb is trying to convince Fisher that he is his security detail, and then he's like, oh, well, I'm not real. So he's trying to say that he isn't real and is just a projection of Fisher's subconscious and was sent to protect him from extraction. So he's lying using reverse psychology. Basically, Cobb is using his own projection to make Fisher believe the team that is against Fisher is actually his allies, and then saying that Cobb himself and the rest of the team are there to protect him from extraction. Then here we see Eanes projecting as Peter to make Fisher believe he is trying to get into the safe and get to the alternate will. Now, Cobb tells Fisher that they're going to enter Peter's subconscious to find out why the will is important as an insult. But really what they're doing is going into Fisher's subconscious for the 3rd layer of the heist, acting like it's Peter's. In the dialogue of the heist plans, Sato says that Fisher's company is the only competitor between Sato and full energy dominance of the world. And this is that Sato wants the competitor, which is Fisher, to be dismantled so that he can have the dominance overall. It turns to evidence of my world model that I'll explain more someday, which is that money is power, which is ultimately control. Arthur then successfully kills one of the projections from the hallway, and since the projections in the Snow Fortress are actually Cobb's, or Fisher's or whatever, it would make sense that this mission is him actively killing parts of his traumatic subconscious, hence why Cobb moves on after the end of the film.
Did you see that?
I'm led to believe that since Cobb is pairing with Ariadne and she designed the Snow Fortress dream level, it's because he wants to be next to the architect of it so that when he summons his secret plan, he has a witness who will believe Cobb didn't execute the projection since he convinced her early on that projections paralyze you with trauma. A big piece of evidence suggesting that Cobb is attempting his own sabotage to ensure he pulls off his secret plan is also a foreshadow. We see Ariadne and Cobb in an elevator, and Cobb being asked how they're going to bring Fisher back. And we watch as Cobb loads a handgun, but it is used later on, just not with Fisher or with Maul. But it is showing that the Limbo finale and intro beach scene were planned prior to the heist even starting, so Cobb knew a way to pull off his own secret plan all along. Note how they're in an elevator at the same time as Arthur and everybody else in the hotel. So it's poetic and on par with the script. It's worth noting that both Fisher and Sato enter Limbo in the same area just at different times. And this actually correlates with my theory of the two half-lights and the reflection on the table in Limbo with Sato. The quick turn that Mal makes to look at Cobb, it shows that Cobb knew what he was doing with his projection of her, because we know how the projection logic operates throughout the film. Ariadne says another way to get the job done is to follow Fisher down into Limbo, and the kick that is administered by Eames will bring him back. And it connects to real neuroscience and sleep theory, if you will, about how our dream knows when to wake us up, but puts a timer on the sleep and dream cycle itself. Cobb says to Eames that Sato wouldn't make it, and Eames shakes his head in agreement. But then again, Cobb knows what he is doing ultimately. He knows the exact amount of time needed to pull all this off perfectly.
Just have to go deep enough.
You don't.
What Cobb says suggests that he didn't perform Inception on Sato in the intro heist, but he simply showed him the idea of it. So, what Arthur said about the tracing of an idea with like Genesis and all that because Sato knew what Cobb had done and what Inception was, they didn't go deep enough, yet that was Cobb's point of not going deep enough. Because Cobb wanted Sato to have the idea of performing Inception to get back to his own children. So, on Christopher Nolan's part, it's just genius writing. Ariadne asks if the projections that Cobb is killing are him destroying parts of Fisher's mind, and he says no. But it seems like he is lying because Cobb's projections are being killed in previous layers, and she didn't ask about that. Sato, Cobb, and Arthur all in a helicopter going up is like a foreshadow that is quiet of Sato and Cobb coming back from Limbo in the finale. Now remember, real life and Limbo in this film are the opposites of a very tight spectrum. And here is some of the most important dialogue of the entire film.
I'd need a guarantee. How do I know you can deliver?
You don't. But I can. So, do you want to take a leap of faith? Or become an old man, filled with regret, waiting to die alone? Assemble your team, Mr. Cobb, and choose your people more wisely.
So now with all of that jazz in mind, the finale is the fifth layer of this whole discussion, which is that Fisher's trauma in his subconscious connecting to Cobb's closure. Both characters have trauma, but Cobb's trauma is what drives the plot. In the finale, we see Ariadne, Cobb, and Maul in the same room. Cobb explains he knew Inception was possible because he did it to Maul first by accident, which we've all been discussing. Now look at this, that exact location that they're at right now, that is also Cobb's home. So once he is back home and he spins the top, it is muscle memory, which means it is reality, but there's more layers to uncover before we can just, throw an answer out there. the scene blocking. So Cobb spins the top in the same spot that he was in, which is his reality check. Maul's spot is empty because she is actually gone. If you pay very close attention right here, Sato mentions a leap of faith. In the dream, Ariadne and Fisher leap into the world underneath where Cobb's actual home yard should be at. So then in the finale where it's reality, Cobb sets out into his own yard, thus closing the gap for good. So the top is spinning. Does reality mean it falls over? Yes and no. Logically and continuity-wise, yes. But in terms of the film, no. It falls over because that's how it would function in real life. That's why it wobbles very briefly. But for the sake of the film, it does not fall over because it is closing the trauma and guilt loop that Cobb hangs over himself because of Maul's suicide. Here's where it gets more confusing. Us seeing the top means it is reality, as said already, because that is what Cobb used to make sure that he was really awake. He spins it the same way we check our front door 5 to 15 times because we just want to make absolutely sure that it's actually locked. It's his trauma reflex so that he doesn't accidentally kill himself thinking that it's all still a dream. Christopher Nolan hid the answer right in front of us using the top. The top is the answer, yet because it relies on spinning until momentum is lost altogether, we wait to see if it does fall over. So it's the perfect scapegoat device for the film itself. I firmly believe that the entire heist had things go wrong early on because Cobb knew that Sato was the only way for him to get back home, and he needed to prove to Sato that he was the only one who could pull all this off. Like in the Raining City, there's two huge things: the train plowing through and Sato being the only one injured. And what I mean is that we know the only way Cobb and Maul escaped to Limbo was to commit suicide, and they chose a train in Limbo. The first heist in the film concludes with Cobb waking up on a train with the rest of his crew, and he says, "I don't like trains."
Kyoto. Why, he's not gonna check every compartment. Well, I don't like trains.
This means that in the Raining City, the train is not an accident. He was controlling his own trauma and grief to derail the heist very specifically. Now, remember how Cobb told Ariadne to not tell him what the layout of the heist was going to be due to possible issues of contamination? It seems it was more of him trying to do it his way, because with very close attention, as they all plan out that Raining City dream lair, Cobb is there. So he's half listening to the plan and half planning out his own derailment of the heist to his favor. And the projections that attack the crew, they are not Fisher's. That was just Cobb's perfect defense because a man like Fisher surely would have private security. But they were Cobb's. It's a dream lair. So the two micro details that are evident for this is that they only injure Sato for starters, nobody else. And that when Ariadne threatens to tell the rest of the team what is really happening, suddenly more projections are conjured out of nowhere.
You have to move.
Time's up.
But that is Cobb's long con plan. He knows he has to show Sato the impossible to get back to his own children. He knows how long it takes to get to Limbo and how long Sato has until he bleeds out. So Sato is injured first, and then in the Snow Fortress, Maul shoots Fisher, which immediately sends him into Limbo. Now, why didn't Cobb shoot Maul? Because again, this was the plan all along. Cobb figured that after the accidental PTSD trigger on the bridge with Ariadne, he could trigger Maul and use that as a perfect excuse to get into Limbo for both Fisher and Sato. And here we are with the legendary finale. It is reality because Cobb takes out the top, touching and spinning it. He woke up, but on the plane, he didn't take it out because people would have seen it. But since the top is visible, it is reality. The secret to it is that a top is designed to eventually fall over due to physics. but Christopher Nolan performed Inception on the audience to make us wait and see if it falls over. But that's the entire point. The answer is the top, which means the finale is reality. The purpose of seeing it, though, is that Cobb moved on and stopped worrying to see if it was real anymore because now he is back with his kids. In the Limbo finale, Cobb's soldier projection gives Sato the top because Cobb figures that if this is the end of the road and he may or may not go to jail in the end, he might as well mentally make Sato spin the top and see if it spins or falls over. Now, granted, we don't see it fall over or watch it spin endlessly, mostly because you can't see it forever due to runtime in movies, obviously. However, it can spin perfectly, but it's to push the purpose of the top falling over in the finale. And that even in Limbo, despite it being infinite subconscious, it wouldn't spin forever, because neither dreams nor reality are forever. Now, it is Cobb's leap of faith by watching the top spin perfectly because for years, his theory was that the top could spin endlessly or perfectly in a dream and that he'd be able to relax. But because of Maul's death, he is unable to take that leap of faith until he was absolutely sure he was in a moment where he thought to himself, okay, this is it. I have to try because either I go home or to jail. And then Sato spins it, and the theory is confirmed. It spins perfectly, so it lets Cobb know that it is all going to be okay, because right now in Limbo, it's all still a dream. Inception is not a dream within a dream. It is planting an idea in someone's mind, and what follows is trauma if you're not careful enough, because it can lead you to not knowing what is real or not real anymore until you face it head on.